Della Avery burst into the room, breathless, soaked from the rain, and holding a dripping paper bag with 2 iced coffees and a sandwich that definitely wasn't worth this chaos. And then she froze. 15 men in tailored suits sat around a sleek glass table, all staring at her like she'd just walked in naked. At the head of the table, a tall man with broad shoulders and a tailored navy suit slowly rose from his chair. His gaze locked on her, sharp and curious. The room was silent until one of the executives coughed awkwardly. I'm sorry," Della stammered, clutching the bag like it might shield her from whatever disaster she'd just walked into. "I was told to bring this to a Mr. Landon on the 8th floor. I must have this isn't, oh my God." "I am so sorry." "You're on the 34th floor," the man at the head of the table said calmly. His voice was low and deep with a rough edge that made the hairs on her neck stand up. "This is the Heston Holdings executive boardroom. Oh God," she muttered again. She looked down at her badge. She was just a temp assistant for a catering company, filling in for her cousin for one day. One day, and she'd just crashed what looked like a meeting of Wall Street overlords. The man smiled, not the polite kind, but the kind that said he was amused and deeply interested. "What's your name?" "Della Avery. This wasn't supposed to happen, I swear. Please just pretend I wasn't here." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Wait," she paused, heart hammering in her chest. "I'm Rowan Heston," he said, slowly walking toward her. "CEO, of course he was. Of course she just embarrassed herself in front of a millionaire CEO who looked like he walked off the cover of a luxury watch ad. "You're not going to get fired," he said, like he could read the panic on her face. "But you do owe me 5 minutes of your time." "I really don't," Della said quickly. He stepped closer. "You just walked into the most boring meeting of my week. And now I find myself wondering who you are and why you look like you ran through a hurricane for a sandwich." Della blinked. "It's a turkey club," she whispered. Rowan grinned. "Sit, join us. What's one more surprise?" She stared at him like he'd grown 2 heads. "I'm not exactly dressed for a boardroom." He looked her up and down. Black jeans, soaked sneakers, and a hoodie with a faded tomato sauce stain. "You're perfect." The room was still silent. Everyone was watching them, but Della's brain had short-circuited the moment Rowan said she was perfect. "I'm going to leave now," she mumbled, but Rowan stepped beside her and gently took the soggy bag from her hands. "Let me walk you to the elevator." The moment the boardroom doors closed behind them, Della exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a year. "I'm really sorry," she said again. "That was probably the most humiliating thing I've ever done." Rowan hit the elevator button, then turned to her. "It was the best thing to happen to me all week." Della laughed, confused and flustered. "You have a weird sense of humor." "I'm not joking." The elevator opened. She stepped in, and before the doors could close, he said, "Della Avery." She looked up. "I'm having dinner at Le Jardin tonight, 7 o'clock. Come." She stared at him. "Are you serious?" "I always am. You don't even know me." "I'd like to." The doors began to close, and he slid his hand between them, keeping her trapped in the moment. "Wear whatever you want. I'll have a table ready." She didn't answer. She was too stunned. He let the doors close. Della stood on the sidewalk in front of Le Jardin at 6:59, wearing the only dress she owned that didn't have a stain or a thread hanging loose. It was black, simple, and barely zipped up the back. Her hair was dry now, curled at the ends, and she wore flats because heels were the devil. A valet opened the door for her, and she stepped inside. "Miss Avery," a hostess asked instantly, "Mr. Heston is expecting you right this way." She was led to a private room in the back where Rowan sat at a candlelit table, wearing a dark suit with no tie, the top buttons of his shirt undone. He stood when she entered. "You came," he said. "I wasn't going to," Della admitted, "but I couldn't stop thinking about how insane this is. And yet here you are." She sat across from him, heart racing. "Why me? You walked into my life like a lightning bolt," he said. "And I haven't stopped thinking about you since." Della's mouth went dry. "You've known me for 5 minutes." Sometimes 5 minutes is all it takes. Dinner was surreal. The food was something she couldn't even pronounce, but it tasted like heaven. Rowan asked about her life, her dreams, her family. She told him she was working 3 jobs to pay off her late father's debts, that she didn't have time for dreams anymore. He listened. Really listened. And then, after dessert, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black box. Her heart stopped. "Okay," she said, half laughing. "That can't be what I think it is." "It's not a ring," he said as he opened it. Inside was a silver key to a car. "It's parked outside." "What?" "I had it delivered while we were eating," he said. "Yours?" "I'm sorry, what?" "You told me you take 2 buses and a train to get to work." "Not anymore," she stared at him. "I can't accept that." "You can, and you will." "Rowan," he leaned forward. "This isn't a game, Della. I don't do casual. I saw you walk into that room and something in me shifted. I want to know everything about you. I want to see what happens if you let me in." She swallowed hard. "This is crazy." "Maybe, but it feels right." She looked down at the key, then up at him. "Okay," she whispered. He smiled. "Okay," he echoed. She nodded. "I'll let you in." And just like that, her entire world changed. Della sat in the passenger seat of the sleek black car, her fingers curled tightly around the edge of the leather seat, trying not to touch anything. The engine hummed like it had been designed for silence, and the console screen glowed with a soft blue light, illuminating her uneasy expression as Rowan drove through the city like he owned it, which, for all she knew, he might. "I still don't get it," she said finally, glancing sideways at him. "Why are you doing all this?" He didn't answer immediately. His hand rested on the gearshift, casual in a way that made it clear he was used to being in control. "Because I don't believe in wasting time." "That's not an answer," she said, voice low. He gave a short breath, not quite a laugh. "You asked me to let you in. I'm just doing the same." Della turned her head to the window. Rain tapped gently against the glass, the city lights bleeding together in streaks of gold and red. "That doesn't mean you buy me a car." "I couldn't stop thinking about you walking in the rain with that soaked paper bag," he said. "You looked like you were carrying the weight of the world." "I kind of am," she muttered. Rowan didn't press. He drove in silence until they pulled up in front of a tall brick building with ivy climbing up the sides. It was tucked between 2 newer developments, its charm preserved like something out of another decade. "I thought you might want to show me where you're from," he said. She turned to him, surprised. "You want to see my apartment? I want to understand you. That's part of it, isn't it?" Della hesitated, her fingers tightening in her lap. "It's not fancy." "I didn't ask for fancy." After a long pause, she exhaled. "Okay. But you're not allowed to judge the chipped tiles or the fact that the radiator makes a noise like it's coughing up ghosts." "I've heard worse." She led him up the narrow stairwell, the walls painted a faded mustard yellow, the air filled with the distant scent of someone's leftover takeout. Her apartment was on the 5th floor, and by the time they reached the top, she was out of breath. Rowan didn't even look winded. She unlocked the door and pushed it open. The space was small but clean. A couch with a knitted throw draped over the back. A stack of library books on the coffee table. A tiny kitchenette with a flickering light above the sink. She stepped inside first, suddenly embarrassed. "You can sit if you want," she said, gesturing to the couch. "Just don't lean too far left or the leg gives out." Rowan walked slowly around the room, not touching anything, just observing. "You live here alone?" "Yeah, my dad passed last year. This was his place. I took it over." "What did he do?" "Owned a secondhand bookstore." "It barely broke even." He nodded, taking that in. "You kept it?" "Couldn't afford to. I sold what was left and used the money to cover some of the bills." Rowan didn't offer pity. He just looked at her like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. "You always take care of things?" "Someone has to," she said, crossing her arms. He walked to the window where an old photo frame sat on the sill. He picked it up carefully. "This your dad?" "Yeah." "That was taken the summer before he got sick. He looks like the kind of man who'd give you the world if he could." "He tried," she said softly, "but life kept getting in the way." Rowan set the photo down gently. "You miss him." Every day, she hadn't meant to say it out loud. But Rowan didn't flinch or look away. He just nodded slowly like he understood something unspoken. "I want to show you something," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Now," he stepped closer. "Now," she followed him outside, down the stairs, and back to the car. He didn't say where they were going, and she didn't ask. The streets blurred past until the buildings grew taller, the cars sleeker, the sidewalks wider. Finally, the car rolled to a stop in front of a towering glass building that looked like it belonged in a movie. "Where are we?" she asked as he opened her door. "My place." Her eyes widened. "You brought me to your home. If we're doing this, I want you to know who I am." She hesitated, then stepped out. The lobby was marble and gold, the kind of place where doormen wore tailored uniforms and the air smelled faintly of citrus and money. The elevator opened silently and they rode to the top floor. The penthouse was nothing like she expected. Warm wood contrasted with steel and glass, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline. But it wasn't the extravagance that caught her off guard, it was the calm. The space was quiet, like it had been waiting for something to fill it. "Why are you showing me all this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I need you to see the contrast." She turned to him. "I've built this life," he said, "but I've never let anyone into it." "Not really? That sounds lonely." "It is." He walked toward the bar and poured 2 glasses of water, but I stopped noticing. "Until you." She took the glass he offered, her hands trembling. "This can't be real. No one meets someone by accident and then." "This? I've never done anything conventionally," he said, "and I don't want to start now." Della stared at the skyline through the window. "You didn't bring me here just to impress me." "No," he said. "I brought you here because I want you to understand something." She turned to face him. "I don't want a fling," he said. "I want a future." Her breath caught. "With you." She opened her mouth, but no sound came. "I'm not asking you to decide now," he continued, "but I want you to know what I'm offering." Della stepped closer, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. "It's too fast. I know, it's too much, I agree. But I can't stop thinking about it either." He reached for her hand. "Then let's stop pretending this is normal and just go with what we feel." She laced her fingers through his. "And what is it exactly that you feel?" He leaned in, his voice low. "That you might just be the reason I built all of this. I just didn't know it until now." The night blurred around them, but the moment stayed crystal clear. Della stood barefoot on the marble floor, the hem of her dress brushing her ankles as the city glittered behind her. She hadn't moved in minutes, not because she couldn't, but because she didn't trust what would happen if she did. Rowan poured himself a drink, just soda, she noted, and leaned against the kitchen island, watching her. He hadn't come any closer since she'd linked her fingers with his. Now he waited. "You said you want a future," she said finally, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "But you don't know what that means for me. I'm not someone who slips into a life like this." "You think this is easy for me?" he asked. "Letting someone see this side of my world, letting them in when everything I've built depends on control." Della turned to face him fully. "Then why do it?" "Because I've spent 10 years surrounded by people who want something from me. Investors, partners, women who memorize the price of my watch before they ask my name. You're the first person who didn't flinch when I offered more than I should have." "I did flinch," she said. "I just didn't run." He gave a short nod. "Then tell me what you want, not what you think I want to hear." "I want." She hesitated. "I want to stop feeling like I'm drowning just to stay afloat. I want to wake up and not calculate the cost of every hour of my day. I want to trust that something good isn't going to vanish the second I believe in it." Rowan crossed the room. "Then let me be that constant." "I can't take things from you," she said, "not without knowing what you expect in return." "I expect honesty. I expect you to tell me when I cross a line, and when I do something right. And if one day I ask you to marry me, I expect you to say yes because you feel the same way I do. That's not the kind of thing you say to someone you just met, but it's the truth." Della stepped back, her pulse quickening. "I need space to think." Rowan nodded once. "I'll have a driver take you home." "I don't want a driver." "Then I'll take you." The ride was quiet, not tense but thoughtful. She watched the streets go by, the city now a blur of unfamiliar possibilities. When they reached her building, Rowan didn't move to follow her out. "I meant what I said," he told her before she closed the door. "I know." Back in the apartment, everything felt smaller, the ceiling lower, the walls closer. She sat on the edge of the bed, still in the dress, and stared at her phone. No missed calls, no messages, no one to talk to but herself. In the morning, she didn't expect the knock. It came just after 8. She opened the door cautiously and found a woman holding a garment bag and a white envelope. "For Miss Avery," the woman said with a polite nod. "From Mr. Heston." Della took the items without a word. The envelope held a single card embossed with a gold R dinner. 8 o'clock. Dress accordingly. She stared at the handwriting. Strong, slanted, unmistakably his. Inside the garment bag was a midnight blue gown, floor length with delicate stitching that shimmered in the light. She'd never worn anything like it. She told herself not to go, told herself it was too fast. Too much. But by 7:30 she was slipping into the gown with trembling hands. At 8 sharp, a black sedan pulled up outside, the same driver from the night before stepping out to open the door. This time, they didn't go to a restaurant. They pulled up in front of a private gallery, glass walls, high ceilings, and a minimalist exterior that didn't hint at what waited inside. When she stepped through the doors, Della stopped breathing. The space had been cleared of visitors. Dozens of paintings lined the walls, but her eyes were drawn to the large canvas at the back, an abstract piece in deep reds and golds, chaotic and beautiful. Rowan stood beneath it, wearing a dark 3-piece suit and no tie, his hands in his pockets. "You rented out an entire gallery?" she asked, her heels echoing on the polished floor. "No," he said. "I own it, but it's the first time I've brought someone here." She looked around. "Why?" "Because this place isn't about business," he said. "It's about who I was before all this." "Before the money, before the company," she faced him. "Then show me." He led her through the space, stopping at specific pieces. A black and white portrait of an older man, a painting of a storm at sea, a sculpture made of twisted metal. "My mother was an artist," he said quietly. "She died before I finished school. This was her dream. I built it for her." Della turned toward him slowly. "You never mentioned her. I don't talk about her, but you asked me why I do this, why I move fast, why I don't wait." "It's because I've already lost too many chances to time." She stepped closer. "And what happens if I say I can't give you answers tonight? Then I wait, but I won't stop showing you who I am." The lights dimmed slightly as they walked toward a velvet-curtained alcove. Inside was a single dining table set for 2, surrounded by soft candlelight. A string quartet in the corner began to play, their music filling the space with something unspoken. Della stared at the table, then back at him. "You don't do anything halfway, do you?" "Not when it matters." They sat. The meal was quiet, intentional. Every detail perfectly crafted, but neither of them mentioned the food. After dessert, Rowan didn't move to stand. He looked at her across the table, his expression unreadable. "I want to propose something that has nothing to do with time," he said. Her breath caught, not marriage, not yet, but something just as serious. She waited. "Come with me to Rome next week," he said. "I have to be there for a summit, but I don't want to go without you." She blinked. "Rome," he reached into his jacket and placed a ticket on the table. "Think of it as a pause, a way to step out of the noise and figure out what this could be." Della stared at the ticket. The name printed beside the seat number, Della Avery. "You already booked it. I knew you'd come tonight. And if I hadn't, I'd have shown up at your door again tomorrow." She stood slowly, her hands resting on the back of her chair. "You're asking me to leave everything for a man I barely know. I'm asking you to take a chance on something that feels right." She looked at him for a long time, searching his eyes. "I'll think about it," she said. "Good," he replied, rising to meet her. "Because I'm not done proving I'm worth it." As they stepped back into the night air, the city moved around them. But something had shifted between them, something neither of them could name yet, but both could feel, and it wasn't going away. The wind lifted Della's hair as she stepped onto the balcony of the cliffside villa, the Mediterranean unfolding beneath her like a living painting. Rome had been a whirlwind of color and sound, but here, an hour down the coast, silence stretched wide and warm. The villa was carved into the cliffs, modern glass and stone against centuries of history. Rowan stood at the edge, hands braced on the railing, his profile golden in the fading light. Della crossed the terrace slowly, her sandals quiet against the stone. "You didn't say the view came with the invitation." "I didn't want to oversell it," Rowan replied without turning, "but I hoped you'd come. I almost didn't." "I know." She joined him at the railing, Below, the sea whispered against the rocks, the sky going lavender at the edges. I haven't left the country since I was 14. My dad saved for 2 years to take me to Montreal. Rowan looked over. You remember it? I remember how happy he was to give us something that felt big, even if it wasn't. Rowan's gaze held hers. You've been giving that kind of big to everyone but yourself. I guess I didn't think I was allowed to want more. You are. They stood in silence, the wind brushing between them. I don't know what I expected when I stepped into that boardroom, Della said slowly. But it wasn't this. Rowan turned to face her. And now, I don't know, you hand me a key, a ticket, a view like this, and it's like being dropped into someone else's life. It's your life now if you want it. She met his eyes. That's what I'm still figuring out. Later that evening, they walked through the nearby village, its narrow streets lit by strings of golden bulbs. Locals leaned out of windows, laughing in a language Della couldn't understand but somehow felt anyway. Rowan stopped in front of a small storefront, its window filled with hand-painted ceramics. I wanted to show you something, he said, opening the door. Inside, the space was warm and cluttered, the scent of clay and lemon oil hanging in the air. An older woman behind the counter waved at Rowan like she'd known him for years. She doesn't speak much English, Rowan told Della, but she's the best artisan in the region. I commissioned something here a month ago. Della blinked. A month ago? I didn't know your name yet. But I knew what I wanted to give to someone. I hoped someday I'd find the right person. The woman brought out a wrapped bundle. Rowan opened it carefully. On the counter, a ceramic dish, hand glazed in deep cobalt. In the center, a single sunflower painted with aching detail. Around it, in delicate script, you are not a storm, you are the sky after. Della touched the edge of the dish. It's beautiful. I didn't know if I'd ever find someone who'd understand it, Rowan said, but now. It feels like it was always yours. Della looked up at him and for once had no words. That night back at the villa, she stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, the dish resting on the table behind her. Rowan walked in from the study, sleeves rolled, a stack of papers in his hand. You're always working, she said softly. He set the papers down. Not tonight, she turned. Then tell me something you've never told anyone. He paused. When I was 16, I was accepted into a summer program for business students. I skipped it. Why? My mother had been diagnosed. I didn't tell anyone at the firm organizing it, didn't return the call. I stayed home and helped her paint the guest house instead. Della crossed to him. What happened to the guest house? He shrugged. I sold it after she passed, but the last painting she did, it's hanging in the gallery. The sea seen from here. Della laid her hand on his chest. You hide pieces of yourself in places you think no one will find, and you walk into rooms you were never meant to enter and change everything. He leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers. I'm not asking for a maybe anymore, he said. I want a life with you, not one built on gestures and gifts, a real one with all the mess and the risk and the beauty. She stepped back, her voice tight. You don't even know if I can handle this world. Your world? Then let's build one that's ours. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a velvet box, not a ring, a gold pendant shaped like a keyhole, delicate and simple. This isn't a promise for someday, he said. It's a promise for now. That I'm choosing you every day with or without the rest. She took the pendant, her fingers trembling. You really don't make anything easy. I can try, he whispered. The next morning, they returned to Rome for the summit. Della trailed Rowan through polished marble corridors and gilded conference rooms, watching him transform into a man of command and precision. But every time he glanced at her from across a room, every time his fingers brushed hers in passing, she felt anchored. That night after the final gala, he pulled her onto the rooftop of the hotel. The city spread below them, ancient and alive, buzzing with lights and history. I have one more question, he said. She raised an eyebrow. Only one, for now. He took her hand. Marry me, Della's breath caught. No ring yet, Rowan said. I want to design it with you. I don't want perfection. I want truth. I want mornings with mismatched mugs and nights when we argue over takeout. I want your stubbornness, your fire, your heart, all of it. She stared at him, her eyes stinging. And if you say yes, he continued, I'm buying the bookstore back. Her chest tightened. You remembered the name. I remembered everything. Della nodded slowly. Okay, yes, she whispered. I'll marry you. Rowan exhaled and pulled her into him, their kiss quiet and fierce under the Roman sky, and when they returned home, the bookstore was waiting. Her name on the deed, his hand in hers, and a new sign in the window, Sun and Sky Books. Because love wasn't in the grand gestures or the luxury. It was in the quiet moments they chose each other, over and over, and this time she walked into the right room on purpose. The little bronze bell above the bookstore door jingled as Della stepped inside, her hair still damp from the spring drizzle outside. Rowan stood at the back wall, sleeves rolled up, carefully placing a row of first editions onto the shelves they'd had custom-built just 2 weeks ago. He looked over his shoulder, and for a brief second, the expression on his face made her forget the chill in her coat. "You're late," he said, voice warm. "I stopped by the bakery. Lucia made those lemon twists again." She held up the small paper bag like a peace offering. "That woman's going to ruin me. Only if you keep eating 3 at a time." He walked toward her, took the bag, and leaned in to kiss her cheek. "You smell like rain and sugar. You smell like old pages and ambition." He raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment?" "It is now." They shared a quiet moment, standing between shelves still half full, surrounded by the hum of possibility. The bookstore had only been open a month, but every day felt like a new story, one they were writing together, chapter by chapter. Rowan broke the silence first. "My father called." Della blinked. "You never mentioned your father." "I don't usually, but he heard about the bookstore, said he saw a photo of us in the paper. The article from the local Spotlight," he nodded. "Said I looked like a man who finally figured out what mattered." She studied him. "And I told him I had." He looked down at her hand, now resting on his, and that it had nothing to do with boardrooms or billion-dollar acquisitions. Della didn't ask what else they'd spoken about. She could feel the weight of it in his stance, the years of distance now bridged by something as simple as a second-hand shop filled with dust and stories. "Are you going to see him?" "I think I will, but not alone." She tilted her head. "You want me to come, I want us to go together." "I'd rather introduce him to the woman who made me whole than try to explain her." She squeezed his fingers. "Then let's do it." A soft knock came from the glass door. A teenager stood outside, face hopeful, holding a stack of used books against her chest. Rowan turned to unlock the door. "We're not open yet," Della said, but he waved her in anyway. The girl stepped inside, dripping slightly on the mat. "Sorry I saw the closed sign, but I was hoping you'd take a look at these. My mom said you buy used sets." Della took the books gently. "Let's see what you've got." Rowan watched as Della knelt beside the girl, flipping through worn pages and asking questions about each edition. She never rushed, never made it transactional. She treated every book like it had lived a life, like it mattered. When the girl left, lighter by a few dollars and glowing with gratitude, Della turned back to Rowan. "She reminded me of me," she said. "I know." They spent the afternoon rearranging the window display, arguing over whether the spring theme should include real flowers or paper ones. Rowan insisted paper lasted longer. Della said beauty didn't need to. Eventually, she won. Later, as twilight settled outside, they sat on the floor with takeout cartons balanced between them, surrounded by crates of unsorted donations. Della leaned her head on Rowan's shoulder, her hand resting on his knee. "You know," she said, "I used to think love was something that came in moments, grand, sweeping ones, fast and loud. And now I think it's this, the quiet, the choice." Rowan took a deep breath. "I have something to tell you." She sat up. "Should I be worried?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This came today." She unfolded it. It was a letter from a foundation she didn't recognize. "They're offering to fund a community reading program in your name," he said. "I told them about your idea to bring books into underfunded schools. They want to partner with the store." She stared at the letter. "This is real," he nodded. "They want to start with 3 schools. All local." Her eyes welled, but she blinked back the tears. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to. It's yours as much as mine." She looked up at him. "You keep giving me things I didn't know I could have, because you never asked for them. But you deserve every single one." The next few months passed in a blur of shelves, signatures, and soft Sunday mornings. The bookstore flourished not just with customers but with life. Children curled up in the reading nook Rowan had built by hand. Elderly couples browsed for poetry. Students came in for coffee and stayed for conversation. They hosted their first author event under fairy lights strung across the ceiling. Della read an excerpt from her father's favorite novel, her voice trembling with joy. Rowan sat in the front row, never taking his eyes off her. One afternoon, Della returned from a school visit to find Rowan sitting behind the counter, a leather-bound journal in front of him. "What's that?" she asked, setting down her bag. He turned the book toward her. "Our story, I've been writing it." She flipped through the pages. His handwriting was steady, precise. "You kept all of it, every detail." She looked at him. "Why?" "Because someday someone's going to walk in here just like you did, and I want them to know what happened when lightning hit the boardroom." She laughed, wiping at her cheek. "You're ridiculous." "I'm yours." She leaned over the counter, kissed him once, then again. "And I'm yours." That night, they danced in the empty store to music playing from an old speaker. No audience, no spotlight, just the rustling of pages and the creak of wooden floors beneath their feet. Outside, the city moved on, but inside, time stood still. Rowan pressed his forehead to hers. "You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't walked into the wrong room?" She smiled. "You would have found me anyway." He kissed her like that was the only answer he needed. Years later, they still told the story of coffee bags and rainstorms, of borrowed time and second chances, of a girl who didn't believe in fairy tales and a man who built one from scratch, and every day they chose each other again, not because they had to, but because they always would.